Hello everyone, today we are going to talk about the possibility of Henry Cavill joining the House of the Dragon cast, or the Ice of Song and Fire universe. But before that, remember to like the video, helps out the channel a lot, and subscribe, and yada yada yada, let's get to it. Yesterday, it was announced that Henry Cavill will no longer be playing the role of Superman. DC is going in a different direction. In October, Henry announced that he was returning to the role. But that was before DC hired their new studio heads, who want to go in a younger direction. So basically, DC is starting from scratch, a full reboot, which is probably for the best in the long haul. But since this announcement, people on Twitter have been speculating, since Henry is no longer with the Witcher franchise either, maybe he can join the world of Westeros. When House of the Dragon was in the middle of the season, a rumor was going around that Henry Cavill and Elizabeth Olsen were going to join the show for season 2, both denied the claims. But since the news yesterday, everyone is fan casting Henry in the world of Westeros. During an interview Henry did with Josh Horowitz, link to said interview in the description below, Henry actually discussed House of the Dragon and said how much he was enjoying it and was really impressed with the writing on it. He goes on to say that it would be really cool to be in the world of Westeros, but he doesn't believe that there is a place for him there, at least yet. Pretty much all of the major roles in House of the Dragon have been cast. The only role with any significance left is Cragen Stark, but at the end of season 1, Rhaenyra tells Jacaerys that Cragen is about the same age as him, so Henry is obviously too old to play him. So Henry being in House of the Dragon is not going to happen. All of the roles left are minor ones, nothing worth his time. But could he be in another spin-off or prequel? Possibly. George R.R. Martin's world is vast, and there are a lot of different characters that I think Henry could play one day. I'll go over a few. The first one is the most obvious. It's the one everyone mentions with Henry, Aegon the Conqueror. Pretty much the quintessential Targaryen, he is the conqueror who took over Westeros with fire and blood. I think this role would pique Henry's interests. It's a leading role, and it can be said that Aegon is the most important person in the history of Westeros. The next character he could play is Maegor the Cruel. Maegor is the son of Aegon the Conqueror and Visenya. Maegor is described as being tall, broad, and fearsomely strong, which Henry has that physicality for the role. Maegor is the second son. His half-brother Aenys sits the throne, but when his half-brother dies, Maegor claims the throne, even though Aenys has a son. Now, the only reason I could see why Henry wouldn't want to play this role is because Maegor the Cruel is cruel. He is like if Ramsay Bolton and Joffrey had a kid. Henry does not really play the villain, at least in recent years, but I think he could really show off his range in this role. The next character he could play is Robert Baratheon in Robert's Rebellion. This would be about the only role where he wouldn't have to wear a wig. Robert, before he got fat, was very tall. Ned said in his youth he was like a maiden's fantasy, clean-shaven, and very muscular. I would say Henry matches that description for the most part. The only issue is Robert was around 20 years of age when the rebellion started, so Henry may be too old for the role. Now, do I personally think Henry will be in the world of Westeros one day? Probably not. They tend to cast unknowns, like in House of the Dragon, Matt Smith is probably the most well-known out of the cast because he was in Doctor Who, but most Americans don't even know what that show is. Henry is a A-lister, I just don't know if they're willing to cast him because of that. So what do you think? Would you like to see Henry in the world of Westeros? Leave it down in the comments below, and if you want more Game of Thrones content, please subscribe and like the video. Check out the Twitter, link in the description below, and as always, have an awesome day.